to another episode of Weekday Saints. We're so glad you're joining in with us in these conversations as we explore faithful work happening in our city of Chattanooga that it's so easy to miss. Often we drive around town and miss all the ways that God is working in the small shops and in the buildings that we pass. And we want to provide a space for Christians to be highlighted and for the name of God to be glorified. This week we're interviewing Veatrice Conley, and really excited for you to hear her story as a mom, as an entrepreneur, as an engineer, and the way she's trying to make the community that we're a part of better. She brings in all kinds of insights into what it meant for her to faithfully take those steps in that direction. So enjoy this episode as we get to spend some time with Veatrice.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Weekday Saint podcast. I'm LaQuisha Ewing, and I have my co-host, as usual, Jonathan Ingram here.
I'm excited. Let's get going.
We have an amazing guest today. I think that this young woman's story is going to be a blessing to so many. I'm excited to learn things that I don't know. We have Miss Veatrice Conley in the studio with us today.
Oh my God, this is just great. I am so excited to just be here. I just don't even have the words.
I feel the energy.
I do too.
Yeah,
it's gonna be
I'm
good.
thanking God for this opportunity. We just start there. You know, when you get an award and you say, first and foremost, I'm thanking God for this. I'm thanking God for this opportunity. I'm very excited.
Well, we thank God for you agreeing to be here. And we want our listeners to get to know you. We're going to sit very relaxed into this conversation and really just let God move. We understand that anytime we have conversations about God that is serious. But I tell people, especially Jonathan, just because we're serious don't mean that we can't be silly.
That's right.
Right. And so God has a sense of humor.
I like that.
And so whatever comes up naturally, we want you to feel free to share that. Okay. And so we really just tell our listeners a little bit about you. Where are you from?
Okay. So I am from Nashville, Tennessee. I've lived in Chattanooga now for 12 years, but Nashville is definitely my home. I grew up in a great household. My parents have been amazing. They've been married. I'm trying to think of how amount of years they've been married. Maybe they don't even want me to tell that. But at least 43 years. I have one sibling, a younger brother. So yeah, grew up in a really great home, God-fearing home. You know, my parents both had us in church, you know, our whole lives. And so, just grew up there, traveled from there to Memphis, Tennessee to attend the University of Memphis. Now here in Chattanooga. So I pretty much lived across the entire state of Tennessee. So I'm a Tennessee girl.
Yes.
Gal.
There you go. So, you know, one of the things we want to really highlight on this podcast is there's so much to your story.
Right.
But I'd love to hear how you ended up in Chattanooga and what's keeping you here.
Yeah. So I went to the University of Memphis and I studied engineering. And my first official job out of school brought me to Chattanooga, Tennessee. I got pulled in on an introductory engineering role at a company called Bunge Oils, and was in Alden Park community, and it's since shut down. But since then, I've been here, and Chattanooga has a hold on me. It's something about the community, the air, the scenery, just the family camaraderie here. I just love this city. So my parents don't too much like that I'm still here and I'm not in Nashville. But that's a job, you know, a career opportunity brought me here to Chattanooga, and I've been planted ever since. Yeah.
So what kind of, you said engineering brought you here. So are you still practicing engineering?
I am. And that's something that a lot of people do not know about me. But yeah, I have, over the past 15 years, I have been a career engineer. So like I said, I started at the University of Memphis. I studied mechanical engineering there. So across sectors, I've worked in the food industry. I've worked in automotive. I've worked in medical device, and now I'm working in refuge and waste. So I work for a company that we produce garbage trucks and recycling bins. So I do hydraulic supplier engineering with them. So I travel to different suppliers and I just make sure that their parts are of quality for our larger units, which are these trucks. So that is something that I've always been passionate about. It's just about how to make things better, how to improve processes. And then that kind of pushed me to the entrepreneurial
That's exactly
side
where I was going, because I'm sitting there going like engineering and garbage trucks.
Right.
And what I know you to be is
a
a
totally different,
amazing small business owner.
Right.
So talk about that.
So I have always been into creating things and taking something and just building it into something else. So that's where the engineering brain comes in. So fashion has also been a big part of me. So being in engineering school, being around a lot of males, I kind of always had to distinguish myself. So, coming in with a nice sweater, helping them dress,
Best looking one in the room, yeah.
giving them, fashion tips and
Yeah.
things. So that's always like my icebreaker with my engineering friends. Like, how can I make you style better and all those things. So either way, so I decided to start a fashion styling business on the side, as engineering being my full-time job and then styling kind of being just something I did for fun, for money. So that's how I kind of got into the fashion scene. And then 3 years ago, I opened a bridal studio, and it's actually located downtown on Cherry Street. So it's still a very part-time business, but a lot of people see that and they think that's all that I do.
But what's the name of that? Because we want to
It's
definitely.
called Unveiled Bridal Studio.
Unveiled Bridal Studio.
Unveiled Bridal Studio, located downtown Chattanooga. I've been open for 3 years, and I focus on helping women, not specifically women of color, but that is my focus, because I really want brides of all shapes, sizes, and colors, but specifically brides that look like me, to know that they deserve that ultimate luxury bridal experience. So that's what I intended to do with that business, and that's why I brought it to Chattanooga. Yeah. It's kind of like a whole round thing, and it's hard for me sometimes to distinguish, okay, do I wear the hard hat or do I wear the pumps, and wear the veil? But both of those parts of my life are what drive me. The engineering is how I take care of my daughter, and the bridal studio is how I give back to the community. So I try to wear both hats the best way that I can. But the engineering side of it, I think it's just so ingrained in me, because it's like, it's work. It's work. So the Unveiled is what gives me that passion to say, hey, I know. And really, engineering is what helped pave the way for me to start my business. I would have never been able to afford to do it. So I'm very grateful to that hat that I wear in engineering. But I think the bridal studio has really started to push and show that I have passion in other areas. And a lot of it is the community connection and how I'm helping women to really find, that dress this for like the most important day pretty much of their life, and the most expensive dress they'll probably ever buy in their life. So yeah, it's definitely been it's been a journey. It's been a journey.
How do you balance all this? You got two really important jobs.
G-O-D.
Yeah.
My faith. I always tell people that God is the CEO of my life, not my business, not my house, but my life. Everything I do, I take to him, and I ask him, order my steps. Where do I need to walk? How do I need to do this? Is this right? Is this wrong? And that's, sometimes when I lay down at night, I'm like, oh, that's God. Everything that happened today, because I don't even remember what I did at 9 o'clock this morning. Or, my daughter's like, Mommy, we got to do this tomorrow. I'm like, oh, I forgot. But I know God was going to take care of that.
So how's your daughter?
She's 7. Her name is Violet.
Yeah. Little girl.
Little mini me. She's another big, that's another job, motherhood. I'm a mother. And I sometimes don't look at that as being a job, but it is. Being a parent is a big part of my life. So yeah, how do I juggle that? I pray, I cry, I laugh, I spend time in self-care. I know we talked about that the other day. It's really not a self-care for the day. It's like, these are things I have to do in order to stay sane and to be me. So yeah, I do a lot of things, but the most important thing I do is I keep an open line of communication in prayer. A lot of prayer.
I think one of the things that is interesting, so as you're talking about what I'm going to call streams of life for you, right? Mm-hmm. So you're talking about your engineering, your bridal shop, being a mother, and then being a whole person, right? You only reference one with an emphasis, calling it work.
Yeah.
So what do you think work is? Like, tell me, like, what do you think work is in general? Because we have a philosophy, and we want to definitely hear where people are.
You know what? We were just talking offline about, you have that reflection around a birthday and you decide, oh God, what have you done for me this year? And what do I want to do for this next year? So I turned 40 last year. So it was a lot of reflection, like, oh my God, I'm not in my 30s anymore. It's going to be 40. So the work piece of it is when I told myself, I said, I have been doing this engineering thing now since I was 19. I'm 40 now. And I've always looked at it as wake up in the morning, go to work, go home. I never have really connected the dots as to, why I was placed in that and why I even, because people ask me all the time, why did you go to engineering? I mean, you don't even look like an engineer. Like
what does an engineer look like?
I mean, I get that question all the time. I come in with my hair and my nails and stuff, and they're like, what do you do? Well, I'm an engineer. They're like, oh, I would have never placed you there. But I think with the work question, I never really answered that question. I just did it because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. I'm supposed to go to college. I'm supposed to pick a major. I'm supposed to go to work. That's what my dad said. Get a job, work a job, retire from a job. We got those parents. So now that it's like, 15 years of doing this, and it's like, I've really just been here. I get a check every 2 weeks. I'm comfortable. It's not as though I'm not trying to strive and I'm not trying to excel in it because I've been promoted. I've climbed the ladder as far as my salary. I do very well financially, but it's still just work. So I'm in that process of
You said something. We're gonna get a siren or something.
Okay.
We're gonna get a little buzzer because when you say just work, that may actually be some product merch or something. Right? They may be employed. You may see that.
It's not just work.
It's
Is that
not
what you're telling
just
me?
work. Like when you say the word just.
Yeah.
Just is almost a belittling term. It's almost to make something secondary. So it's just work.
Right.
Or, it's just a sandwich, right? So when you say it's just a sandwich, what you're saying is, well, it could have been caviar. It could have been steak. But it's just a sandwich. So when we think about work, we think about the honor and the pleasure that we have to do work.
Absolutely.
And that sometimes people don't think of their work as ministry. Like societally, we've set it up to where work lives here and then the rest of our being exists here. But the reality is that like God made us whole.
Absolutely.
And so the work you're doing is not just work. It's the work that's been given at hand, right?
I love that. Yeah.
I love how your story has these sides that we oftentimes don't put together, but the Lord's made you in such a way where you're gifted in these multiple things where you can see what someone could be wearing at a wedding and the dignity of that. But I love what you're getting to do in your engineering job that is so vital to our society.
Yeah, being at the studio doesn't feel just like work to me. And that's where I think the reflection comes in. Like, how do I evolve and push more towards being a full-time entrepreneur? Because I don't feel like that. When I'm in those four walls down in my studio, it doesn't feel just like work. It feels like this is where I'm supposed to be. But then when I meet a little girl that wants to be an engineer, or like my daughter asks me questions about things, that's when I feel like, okay, I was supposed to do that too. So I think it's about purpose and just really diving into, how can I change that mindset and really say, okay, I've done this, I'm doing this, and if I want to continue it, how do I do it differently?
I would love to dive into though being a small business owner. Oftentimes you can see a storefront and it looks awesome and you walk in and things look great, but there's a lot of challenges that you're having to face and walk through. I'd love for you to tell us, what are some of those challenges that you're having to deal with as a small business owner? And then you talk a lot about trusting God. What does that look like tangibly to trust the Lord in those challenges you're facing?
Oh, wow. So I can offer a lot of advice for that. So I actually opened my business January 16th, 2021. So it's right in the smack middle of the pandemic. Probably one of the most riskiest, boldest things I've ever done in my life. But I had a vision. And I worked on that vision all of 2020. And when the pandemic hit, I said, that doesn't stop me. Pandemic's not going to stop me from making this business plan, come to fruition. So I opened my business in 2021. The first year, it was gold. It was like, oh my gosh, there's a nice studio downtown. It's brand. Anytime something's new and shiny, everyone wants to come play, right? And then 2022, it still went smooth. It was, some bumps in the road because it is a very seasonal business. So I knew there were going to be times where business wasn't just rolling in. But 2023, last year, I don't know if this was my Jordan year or what, Krisha, but I really had to trust God in this vision because business, 1 month, it was great. 3 months, it was dead. Well, I won't say dead, but it was on life support. And then, boom, went right into a dead season. So I would say the past 6 months of this business has been very rough. And learning that is just to stay the course, not to jump ships. I've learned a lot about patience, and I've learned a lot about pivoting, really having to say, okay, I did it this way for the first year, can't do it that way the second year. Did it this way the second year, can't do it that way. So every single year has been almost like what we're talking about, a year of reflection. When I come to my birthday business, my business birthday, is sit down, pen and paper. What did I do right? What could I do better? I don't like to say what did I do wrong. What could I do better? So fast forward 2024, still not, the business hasn't skyrocketed or anything, but I'm proud of myself for staying the course and being able to say, I need help. I need to have coffee with other business owners. I need to show up more to networking events. So, and having a full-time job is a big barrier in that because I'm trying to manage that and the business. But what I've learned is a lot of entrepreneurs do that. They have full-time job, they have a business. So I can't use that as a mind block or an excuse that my business isn't thriving. So I think the best advice I give people is just stay the course and know when to pivot. When it's time to fold, I'm going to fold, but I'm not really folding because I'll probably do something different and I'll take what I learned from this business and maybe I'll do something differently. So it's really about just trusting your vision. It was my dream. I planted it. So nobody else can, do anything for me with that, but trusting my vision and asking God to just keep that clear. Because some days it's cloudy. I was just telling someone that the minute I go to put my website on pause, somebody calls. Or I get a text message, hey, I want to send my friend to you.
So do you see that as a God wink? Because what I'm hearing you say is that God is giving you a vision. And even though it didn't look like from 2021 to 2022 and so on, that you stuck with the vision that God gave you despite what was before you.
Yeah.
And the patience to do that, the fortitude to do that, and the courage. To trust God. So when I hear you say, I trust God, in the way you just kind of laid it out, I'm like, well, he gave us a vision, right? Yeah. And so just because I'm not seeing it in all the way in actuality doesn't mean that it's not God's vision.
Yeah, and also listening and learning from other entrepreneurs is something in the beginning, you kind of feel guarded, like you don't want to share with other people like what you're trying to do. But then you really just sit down with other entrepreneurs and we're all going through the same things. We all have good months. We all have bad. Even McDonald's has bad months. We'll never know about it. But even the CEO of McDonald's probably goes home some days and like, this is just a mess.
This sounds like fellowship, Jonathan.
It does.
It sounds like amongst believers when we don't know what each other is going through. But the moment you get in community,
when you get to that
and
altar,
you realize, maybe you not even get to the altar. Maybe you just are in a small fellowship and you having a conversation like this, and you're like, oh, so it's not just me.
It's not just me. Yeah,
bearing each other's burdens.
Absolutely. Yeah. And being able to raise my hand and say, that's been the biggest lesson I've learned from being a business owner, is not being scared to ask for help. This Chattanooga has an awesome entrepreneur ecosystem. I've never seen anything like it. I have friends that have businesses all across the United States. And when I tell them about the supportive groups, the grants, the free events, they're like, sister, get to every single one because we have to pay to even listen to this information, or we have to pay to apply for a grant and still don't get it. So I've learned so much by just showing up and asking the questions. Because showing up is the first step in anything we do. Just showing up, being present. So, yeah.
Can you tell us, I'd love to hear a story where you just really felt like the Lord showed up, whether in engineering or in your small business, where you were able to do something, you just felt like the Lord was in the middle of it with a customer or with a project you were working on. Is there some way you've seen God show up in your work?
So many times. So let's just try to find one. Well, I would say when I was starting my business during the pandemic, like I said, was crazy. But being able to get funding was a really, really hard process. And I kind of had to swallow my pride on a lot of things because on paper, my personal finances were really, really great. But I didn't have any business credit, or I didn't have any experience. Like I had
most
all
startups.
right. I had all this work experience, and I'm like, but I'm an engineer and I do this. And they're like, but what businesses have you started, right? So the first person I went to just flat out told me, no, it's a pandemic. We're only working with current clients. And I'm like, okay, that's understandable. So that one the knife kind of only went in a little bit, didn't go all the way in. So the second bank that I went to, they had my information for like weeks. So we were going back and forth. I'm like, oh, this is doing good. Kind of tell people it's kind of like just stripping down naked. I know this is a faith-based podcast, but let's just not try to visualize
Pretty vulnerable.
that. But it's really like you're walking in there and you're giving them everything. I mean, you're talking about things you might have did back in 19. But so everything was going great. And then literally they sent me an email 2 or 3 months into it saying, we're sorry, we can't do this. And I'm like, oh, no, God. No. We've been working too long to get an email. I need a phone call, right? So I called them. And they just kind of made it clear some things, and it was hard. It's hard to receive what we do not want to hear. But I cried and I fussed and I called my mom and all that type of stuff. And so then I called a lady named Linda Bullard, and most people know her in Chattanooga as the business plug. And so I said, God said, call her. I don't know why he said, I never had talked to her on the phone in that. And she told me about a small business loan through local credit union. And I was like, there's no way they're going to give it to me. I was just at a bank and they wouldn't give me anything. 3 months, stripped down, gave them everything. They wouldn't give me anything. So literally she said, no, just call them. You've been working with SCORE and they've got a program. And long story short, went in there 2 weeks later, I got $50,000. And that's when I knew. I was like, God, you told me to call that lady. And I never had talked to her on the phone, but I had been seeing her post on Facebook about helping businesses. And I plugged in, God showed up. And I knew at that moment, I was like, that's when I said, he is the CEO. I've got to constantly consult with him on any decisions that I make, because the Veatrice decision would have been to throw that business plan in the trash can. Because I really was like, you know what? Maybe not in the trash can, but I would have definitely filed it far, far back. I would have said, you know what? I'm not doing this again, because that feeling of the rejection from that bank, I had never felt. I mean, I had bought a house, I had bought cars, I had bought all these things. And I'm like, all I needed was just this small seed money to start my vision. And they just broke me.
Isn't that just like God, though, to develop our character in a lane that we don't even, because when you opened up this, this conversation, you were talking about how reluctant you are to ask for help.
Yeah.
How reluctant you were. Like if Veatrice had to do it, I probably wouldn't call anybody. I probably wouldn't have reached out.
Yeah.
And so God sends you, this person.
Yeah.
And I do. Linda Murray Bullard is amazing woman. And so I don't even know her, but God told me to call. And so you call her at the seed or the urging.
Yeah, I call her all the time now. You should too. Now it's like speed down, but that was the beginning of you can't be afraid to ask for help. And it's the same way in prayer. It's the same way, when you bow your head and you thank God for food, whatever. You just can't be scared to express what you need. And I think that's what I've gotten so much better at. And I do it now in all my relationships, family, friends. If I need help or I need to talk to you or I just need prayer or whatever, I'm not scared to ask for that now. Yeah, I know it's so important to just have that openness and know when you need it. Now, sometimes it takes me a little longer. I don't jump at it. Sometimes I
Yep.
kind of have to give myself a pep talk. But once I get you on the phone, it's just like, whew, it's done.
The release.
It's done. Yep.
Is there a Bible story or a Bible verse that is really meaningful to you that encourages you in your daily work and as a mom and a small business owner, as an engineer?
Yeah.
Is there something that you kind of look back to in Scripture or an idea from God that is a daily reminder for you?
Wow. I kept trying to think of like a favorite verse, but there's so many, and I hate to like just put one out there. But anything that surrounds like patience and waiting, I'm learning now how important it is to just trust the wait and not be so anxious to solve things on your own. Like, I guess lean not on your own understanding, and then, and always acknowledge him and he will direct. So sometimes I just have to sit back and just say, I mentioned that before, just Lord, order my steps, because if these shoes lead me where I want to go, it's not going to be good. So I just ask him, what do you want me to do? What is your will for me? How would you want me to move? Just being more patient and waiting. And then as a mom, it's definitely patience. Anything in the Bible about patience. Also about setting a good example. Watching what I say, being quick to listen before I speak with my daughter, because she's very, she takes everything I say like it's bond, like it's the word, like we take the word. So I have to be very careful with how I explain things to her, how I present things to her. So just asking God to like really, when I'm speaking to her, take hold of my tongue and really make sure that I'm nurturing her and I'm giving her that motherly advice and that motherly focus that she needs. And just anything about being grateful, anything about just being full. Because there was a lot of times in life where the glass was very low, and now it's just, so,
abundance.
and then there's some days where I'm like, don't bring no water over here. I don't need no more in this glass. It's overflow. Like today, I'm like, Lord, I've got this. I got to be here. I got to be here. So sometimes I just say, okay, peace, be still. Peace, be still. The waves and everything's going. And I'm like, Lord, I just ask the waves to be quiet. I just need a little peace. So there's a lot of verses, and I try to do devotion every single morning. So there's not one verse that sits with me, but so many just help move me. Yeah.
I'd love to lean in a little bit on your small business, and you started by telling us why you started that and kind of where some of your focus is. I think that's really beautiful that kind of your heart in that is helping people feel seen on a really special day.
Oh, yeah.
With a beautiful dress.
Yeah.
How have you seen that show up in people's lives when they come into your shop and ways that you've been able to walk with folks in that moment?
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, my studio is only 800 square feet, but it feels like a mansion. Like when people come, they bring their mom, their grandmother. I mean, they bring friends, family. So I tell them, hey, the more the merrier. COVID, of course, I couldn't do that, but now it's like, hey, come on in. The more people, the better. A lot of women come in nervous, but they leave out just so ecstatic and so excited about the process and their big day. It's a lot of pressure. So I try to make sure that they feel relaxed. So of course we do partake in a little bit, of wine and things of that nature, but it's really just to help them relax and know that it's their time. It's about them. I really focused on them, because a lot of times brides, when they're planning their wedding, they're thinking about everybody else. The food, the venue. And this is thousands of dollars that get spent. I just had no clue how much weddings really cost until I tapped into this industry. But it's to let the bride know today and this wedding, it's about you. It's about your commitment, what you're planning to do. It's about celebrating that. So if at any point this experience does not feel fun, or it doesn't feel like you're receiving, the joy of it, we want to stop. We want to reset. So I've had some brides cry. I've had some brides laugh. We turn music on, and it's really just a good time. It's a time for them to just kind of be away from all the other things that are going on. And then there's the pictures that come, after the wedding that really solidify to me, okay, we did good. And I cry with them, like when I see their pictures, I'm like, oh my God, I helped her do that. But it's really fulfilling because, you see people get married all the time, but you don't know the steps that they take to plan. I mean, you see these beautiful, lavish weddings. You see all the flowers and the pomps and circus, all that, but you don't really know the pressure that a lot of people put on themselves to make these productions, right? But really, when it comes down to it, it's about the love. It's only about those two people. So I try to remind the bride, this dress represents the love, not just for, your significant other, but for yourself. So let's show that. Let's show, if you want to show your curves, let's show your curves. However you want to accentuate your body in this gown, this is your time to show people that you love yourself. So it's fulfilling. It's almost like gaining a sister every time I go. What is it? The story of the traveling pants or whatever book.
So when you see one of your brides out, what?
Oh, it's, hey girl, how you doing? How you been? And some of them, we're on year 3. Like they were married 3 years ago, and it's when I see the happy anniversary post, it's like I just have this emotional moment, like, oh, I was a part of that, even though I wasn't there. I was there. And that's a very fulfilling, yeah. And that's what I think about when I'm like, you know what, I'm going to throw this business away. I'm quitting today. And then I just remember, like, I was a part of this wedding. Now they're expecting a child or they're moving into a new home. But it all started with, well, it didn't all start with that. But the commitment was, solidified. And that union was made in a dress that came from my studio. So that feels good. It really does. It feels good.
I love the fact that you call your bridal shop Unveiled, because when you think about bridals, like bridal ceremonies, you think of the veil, but you call it Unveiled. And as you kind of laid out your story here for us today, you spared no corner of talking about your life, and there's an unveiling process. So I'm listening to your story, and I'm like, what you're offering to others. The work that you get to do for others is the work that God has done in you. So you're creating a space in your bridal shop that God has afforded you to have juxtaposed to your engineering. This is a space where you feel free and and you're trying to offer that up. And so that is not just
a job.
That is,
I love this. It's going to stick with me.
Hopefully it will. But it's a work. It's an important work. And the ladies that you see, the families that you're impacting, the community feels your willingness to put your work into our community's hands in action through engineering, the bridal shop. I know your daughter is she's amazing. I have to shout out Violet because I think I actually have only met her once in passing, but I watch her. I'm a fan. I'm a Violet fan. I'm a Violet fan because she has some little free libraries. And so, this little kid comes up on my social media feed and she's doing, every year she does a book drive. And she collects books to put in a little free library for other kids in her community. And so she's, to your point, she's watching the work of your hands, the things that you're doing. And she's not boxed in. No. And she understands, Mom understands God. Yeah. And so God's not boxed in. So like, I'm going to keep my eye on Violet. Because I feel that her mom, and I said this to Jonathan, I feel like her mom is giving her a great example of what it means to live God on a daily basis.
Yeah, your story hits home for me. And I think about why we do the work we do, that God cares about, that he's renewing all things to himself. So I think about your engineering work, and I look in Revelations, and the new heavens and new earth is described as a city, and who makes a city? A bunch of engineers.
Absolutely.
But then the other story that we see at the end of Scripture too is, how is God's people described? They're described as the bride of Christ, this beautiful bride.
I love it.
Where they're fully seen not by just other people, but by God. And so when you see someone come in their shop and you get to help them pick out the right dress, you're seeing them. What a cool picture of how God sees them.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story, because this stuff matters. And the work you're doing, even if we don't know about it, I'm going to look at my recycling bin a little bit different now. I am. And I just really appreciate it.
I do too.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on. We appreciate you sharing your story. And I'm just going to piggyback on Jonathan's, because man, you just gave me a vision of the engineer and the bride, right? Maybe that's the episode name. We don't know, right? So you have within one, you're helping make our city more beautiful by being part of the bride. We are all part of the bride as believers, and you're constructing something very unique. And how you're doing it through your shop. And so we are grateful that you would even come and have a conversation with us, share your story. We are excited for this episode of the Weekday Saint podcast with our amazing guest. We want to thank her for coming into the studio.
Thank
Veatrice
you.
Conley.
So much fun.
And
so much fun.
Listen, meet us back here for our next episode. We are going to be intrigued by another amazing guest that's going to share with us how God is moving in the work that they do daily. See you next time on the Weekday Saint podcast.